because part of life is to deal with sadness, grief, and sorrow. These are qualities that we have to encounter in this world as the nature. Normally, sorrow is a byproduct of having certain relationships taken away from us when we were not prepared. And many of us will feel that there's things that happen in our lives that we didn't want it to happen, and it just happened. For example, you have many loved ones in the world, and you want them in your life, you want them around you, you want them connected to you, but for some reason, they happen to leave the world, or something unfortunate happens to them, or they're injured. So in the Bhagavad Gita, there is a very beautiful text where it explains that happiness and distress are like winter and summer seasons, and they arise from sense perception. And how that works is very interesting because it's a cyclic or cyclical pattern in life. And that cycle can last forever, or we can snap out of the cycle. That is a choice that we all have. You will notice that your suffering or sadness will not last forever. And similarly, your happiness will not last forever. So how to avoid the cyclical experience? We're going to break it down a little bit more. So in the yoga text, it is explained that whenever there is an experience of sorrow, the first stage of sorrow is that we want to deny the experience of sorrow in our lives, and we are in denial of it because sorrow is painful. It hurts your whole being, and your whole existence is affected by it. And we resist the sadness to come into our lives because we were told that it's not good to be sad. It's
It is.
bad to be sad. It's funny when people tell me, Veda, I am feeling very sad. And I said, that is very good. It's so nice that you're sad. And people look at me and they don't expect that response. Because it's part of life. Let sadness come. And from that sadness, you have the ability to grow. So the first experience of sadness when people face, they're in denial. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want to accept it. So then what they do is they use some external stimulants to suppress that experience of sadness. Have you noticed when you're sad, you may drink a little bit more, you may sleep a little bit more, you may eat a little bit more, or you may starve yourself. There is always extreme behaviors because we do not want to accept that there is sadness, and we want to deny that experience to ourselves. Is everyone with me? Does everyone agree that those are some of the experiences we have? So this is step one. And then the step two, what happens when you try to suppress those emotions and deny yourself the experience of sadness, then what happens? Then you get angry. Unless and until we accept the sadness and the grief, then it's going to remain with us no matter how much we deny it. And when finally denial doesn't work, then we start to become very angry. Why are you still sad? This one did you wrong, that one did you wrong. So that there is an eruption of emotions that start to become very fiery. And this anger, as we understand, has three main qualities. That anger is like a hot coal that we hold in our hands. It's burning you. So therefore, you want to throw it at somebody. So whoever comes in front of you, they become recipient of your anger. And then this anger is misdirected because it'll never hit its target, and is also disproportionate. The proportion to the anger when it comes in your hands, it's growing very big, the fire. So it's disproportionate and it's misdirected. So this is what happened when we didn't accept the sadness and grief in our life. We didn't receive it properly. And so now it has turned from denial to anger, and anger in all different directions. And from here, we start, the rational part of the brain, intelligence starts to kick in, and we start to think of ways that we can control and navigate and live our life through this anger. So we start to negotiate with these emotions of anger in our brain. And it becomes a difficult task because the anger is so heavily burning you. The intelligence is not getting enough time and opportunity to actually have a rational dialogue with you. So the intelligence tries to have a dialogue with the mind and the senses, and they try to negotiate, they try to bargain a deal. Is it possible to negotiate with someone that is screaming at you and shouting at you, and you're saying, no, 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 just calm down, let us resolve this? And he's like, no, 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 you're the fault, you're the person to blame. And you're like, no, no, let's just breathe, let's just work this out. Have you seen? Sometimes it just doesn't work. So much so that negotiation doesn't work. And then we become even more sad. So in English, they call the word depression. Depression means when your pressure is even pushed down deeper. So this is the trajectory of sadness, grief, and sorrow in our lives. This is how it filters down into our existence. So there's 4 stages of, I give you broad stages because each one of them have even more subcategories. But it's such an interesting way when we deny ourselves the certain experiences. The techniques that we always practice in yoga is called, because we use a combination of Vedanta and Bhakti. So that's why our strategies, the approach that I generally recommend is the approach of Bhakti and Vedanta, where we use our intelligence to be present with every single emotion and gift that comes into our life. We don't get into the depression, we don't get into the grief, but we observe the grief from the outside. And we use 2 methodologies. One is to journal. So it's called a yoga journal. The sages, they always write their experiences, thereby objectively looking at their suffering and pain and whatever is happening in their life. Imagine if Fabienne wrote the journey of her life. Every experience she has, she journals and journals and journals and journals. And finally, when she leaves this world, that'll be called a Fabienne's journey of self-discovery. And it'll have all the techniques and tips on how she overcame the different obstacles in her life. That's how we have the yoga traditions, yoga philosophies. It is the experience of the sages that they were able to sit with all the sufferings and emotions in the path of self-realization, and they beautifully documented and shared with their students. So I want to give you now steps to deal with it. Now we have analyzed how sorrow takes different shapes and forms and completely takes over our life. And now I want to give you some tools on how to actually overcome this sorrow. And number 1 step in dealing with sorrow is to acknowledge the sadness, the grief, and the pain and the sorrow. Acknowledge does not mean you jump into the frying pan. You just simply realize, oh, someone is there. That is a real flame, and that is a real fire. You simply bring your awareness and your attention to that particular emotion. So this is how it works. It's really simple. You do not say, I am sad. The vocabulary has to change when you acknowledge that. You don't say, I am grief-stricken. You don't say those words, because then you're identifying with the very emotion. And that emotion and you, they're completely two separate things. So acknowledging generally means you are separating that emotion from you. You are able to see that outside. So you can say, my mind is experiencing sadness. For example, if you lose a loved one in your life and you have grief in your life, if you don't manage that grief, it'll affect your lungs. Grief generally gets stuck in the lungs. You cannot breathe. You're not getting enough oxygen into the body when you don't process this properly. So please note the difference between separating you and the emotions, and making sure you understand how that emotion is causing the impact it is having in your life. Do not deny yourself. Then we have, within that emotion of sadness and sorrow, there will be a need for you to accept that there's going to be various emotions that is going to be connected and related to that sadness. So the second one will be acceptance. Acceptance of what? For example, you lose someone now, you'll notice that emotion, that sadness, is connected to many sadness of the past that you have experienced. And there will be many surrounding other emotions that will arise from this. And we have to simply allow that experience and differentiate all the different emotions that are coming into our lives. And it's very important to understand also that these emotions are very unique to you. It's very personal. It's not that someone can understand you, someone can fully understand you, what you're experiencing. They will never understand. So only you can experience and understand. It's very customized. So not two people, their grief will be the same. The impact will not be the same. The various sub-emotions will not be the same, because we are interconnected in all our relationships. They're so interconnected. When Kamala is sad, then everyone that is connected to Kamala will also become sad. And so therefore, it leads us to the next point, that we need to create a support system, that we need to surround ourselves even more now with the people all around us. Instead of isolating ourselves, we need to bring everyone together and say, hey, I need your friendship, I need your support, I need your love. What that does, this gives an opportunity for all of you to gel, stronger bond, and grow even stronger, and together overcome this grief and sadness. And you'll notice that when you get your support system of everyone that's around you, they will give you so much love and so much support that you will heal so fast. There is no greater medicine than the love and support and the blanket of community support that you can have, because that is the most powerful healing component. But most people, whenever they're grieving and their sadness, they want to be alone, correct? But when you do that, you're only digging yourself sometimes more and more into the rabbit hole. You will notice people in the tribal jungles and things like that, they don't have mental health crisis. I come from a very remote tribal village in northeastern India. I never heard of, oh, this person is crazy, this person is sad. You don't hear these conversations. Someone dies in the community, whole community comes together and they cook and they talk stories and they sing and they dance and they party. Every time something happens, there's a big party and everyone gets together. What is the room for sadness? These are first world problems, first world sickness. So we need to go back to the roots. We need to go back to the fundamental roots of our existence, which is community, family, unity. And so the point, this third point, is that we need to seek support system within our community, within our friend circle. I want to add this thought to all of you. Please understand, when you were a child and it was cold outside, as a child, did you have to think about buying a jacket, buying gloves, and wearing thick shoes? Did you have to think about it? Theodora would know because she has two little babies, very beautiful angels. They don't have to tell mommy, it's going to be cold outside tomorrow. It's going to be, -2 degrees. Did you buy us jackets? Did you get us some shoes? Did you get us some gloves? Theodora knows very well that it's going to be very cold. It's going to be -2 degrees. She has already brought all the clothes for her kids so that they're protected and sheltered. She doesn't need to be told by anyone. So Mother Nature, the divine, who is our mother and our father and our creator, they think about all of these things because we are their children. They know what we can handle and we cannot handle. So they will only give you sadness and grief and all of this what you can handle, because they have already given the support system for you. Now it is a matter of choice whether we use that support system, whether we use those jackets and thick socks and shoes, because it is provided to us. Please raise your hand. You tell me that you don't have a single friend in the world. Raise your hand if you have no friends. Raise your hand if you have 5 or more friends. And how beautiful is that, right? So therefore, we have to understand that every experience we have, it is simply an opportunity for us to grow and become better and more resilient and more wise in this world. And that's why the fourth category on this is to take shelter of the divine. Whoever that divine being is for you, just simply, even if you don't believe in the divinity, you simply say to the divine, speak to the divine, even if you don't have one, even if you don't believe one, by simply saying it, you're invoking the energy of the divine. This is explained very clearly in the yoga text. And I want to leave you with this thought. Everything that happens in our lives has a very deep spiritual meaning. And when we find that meaning, and if you find the meaning of all the difficulties in your life, then you will realize that is the path, that is what self-realization means. So I just give you a very brief overview on how sorrow is manifested in our lives. And then second point that I made was how sorrow overtakes our life. And then the third category I explained is how to find the divine purpose in all sadness in our life. So those are the three categories that we discovered and discussed today. We should always be present with the emotions as an observer. Everyone knows the famous story of Ramana Maharshi, who is a great saint from India. And he had some pain on his arm. And someone asked him about that pain. And he just said, this body is just causing me some problem. Like, as he's speaking to the body as though the body is a completely separate entity from him. And that is an example of how we have to become observer of our emotions and of our suffering and pain and whatever is happening in our life. We are simply the observer of all of that. It's very clear. It explains that the understanding and the realizations and the way of functioning of a yogi is very difficult for general people to understand. So number one thing is that we should never give them pity. The minute we give them pity, we are helping them to go deeper into that rabbit hole.
Parce que aux premières secondes laquelle ils vont ressentir la pitié, ils vont comment on va dire, ils vont se enfoncer davantage dans un cercle vicieux, dans leur cercle vicieux, qui va les amener vers le bas.
So the best way to deal with someone in that situation is to go and spend time with them, go help them cook around the house, just give them a lot of company and support and just be around them. Whenever they want to speak, we listen. We don't give any advice. That is the last thing you should ever do with someone who's going through sorrow, unless they ask you for advice. For example, when I deal with people who are sad, I go to their homes, I spend time, I go with them and we cook together. I may even go to, a park with them, and, depends. I'll go to the park with them, go for a walk and talk about nature and talk about the beauty and all the beautiful gifts that we have in life and things that create this emotion that they're not alone and this whole universe is there supporting their existence. And we should share their suffering and pain without showing them pity. For example, most common responses that we have, if you say, I'm really sad, then you say, oh, poor Emily, I'm so sorry you're so sad. I am also sad for you. And this is how we talk. And what happens is Emily goes down even more sad. Now there is two people who are sad and crying together. And then anyone that comes to that group, and then they also start crying, and they're also sad, and everything is just charged with sadness. There are people who are going through so much deep, they have been in such depression that it has spread throughout their body. And I always say, please go see a doctor, put yourself on medication, and first you become stable, and then I will be able to help you, teach and guide you through, further healing and becoming free from dependency on external stimulants to remain stable.
Thank you.